Hello, I'm Eric Stamm, and on behalf of Hope Out Loud, No Nukes, No War, the UN Association of Connecticut, the Connecticut Peace and Solidarity Coalition, Veterans for Peace Connecticut Chapter 42, and Sunrise Connecticut, I want to welcome you to the 2020 Hartford area Hiroshima-Nagasaki Remembrance and Shared Call for Nuclear Weapon Abolition, and to ask you all to hope out loud that a peaceful world is possible on the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. There is no greater threat to our survival than nuclear weapons. I want to repeat that. There is no greater threat to our survival than nuclear weapons. That's why all of us gathering on August 6th here and around the world demanding the absolute abolition of nuclear weapons represents our only hope for surviving this threat. I moved back to Hartford in 2001, and thanks to my father, was immediately immersed into the activist community here. The activist elders at the time told me Hartford had observed August 6th annually, describing various sites and remembrance practices going back at least 25 years. Conservatively, that means we've shared this call continuously for at least the past 44 years. My first activist experience was here in Hartford in 1959, 1961 at the latest. A 9-mile walk and rally calling for nuclear disarmament. Ban the Bomb had just been coined, and the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament had commissioned a logo derived from the semaphore symbols for N and D, what became known as the peace sign. I was a small child excited to carry a sign and shout chants. Now I'm becoming one of the activist elders. A new nuclear arms race has begun. Geopolitics is further than ever from peace, and the doomsday clock is counting seconds as there are no longer hours or minutes left before midnight, before the end. So let's make sure our shared call tonight is passionate, is loud, and urgent. Thank you and welcome.
I'd like to begin the program with an opinion piece entitled Why the World is Closer Than Ever to Doomsday by Ban Ki-moon, Mary Robinson, Jerry Brown, William J. Perry, and this appeared in January of 2020. Ban Ki-moon is a former United Nations Secretary General. Mary Robinson served as both Irish President and United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Jerry Brown was governor of California from 1975 to 83, and again from 2011 to 19. He is now executive chair of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist. William J. Perry was the U.S. Secretary of Defense under President Bill Clinton and is now chair of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist. We are in humanity's greatest moment of peril. In January, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, which takes stock of the threats posed by nuclear war and climate change each year, moved the doomsday clock to 100 seconds before midnight. We are now measuring how close the world is to catastrophe in seconds, not hours or even minutes. It is the closest to doomsday that we've ever been since the clock was created in 1947. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, which was founded by those who worked on the Manhattan Project during the World War II, and now includes 13 Nobel laureates on the board, issued a statement on Thursday in January that read, "Humanity continues to face two simultaneous existentialist dangers, nuclear war and climate change, that are compounded by a threat multiplier, a cyber-enabled information warfare that undercuts society's ability to respond. The international security situation is dire, not just because these threats exist, but because the world leaders have allowed the international political infrastructure for managing them to erode. Together we have served as United Nations Secretary General, President of Ireland, Governor of California, and U.S. Secretary of Defense, and we remain active today on issues of global concern. That is why we are heeding the call of the Bulletin by taking the step of urging fellow world leaders to act before matters spin further out of control. We share a common concern over the failure of the multilateral system to address the existential threats that we face, from the U.S.'s withdrawal from the Paris agreements and the Iran nuclear deal to the deadlock at nuclear disarmament talks and division at the UN Security Council. Our mechanisms for collaboration are being undermined and when we need them the most. On the nuclear threat, we've seen unprecedented brinkmanship over the past 12 months by a half dozen nations, the termination of major arms control agreements, a dizzying proliferation of nuclear weapons, and an unsettling amount of loose talk about the mistaken idea that limited nuclear warfare is somehow possible or winnable. The dangers we face cannot be overstated. Given the current state of global affairs, it's hard to imagine that in the early 1990s, the doomsday clock was moved as far away from midnight as 17 minutes. But there are concrete steps we can take today to turn back the clock and make the world safer. We appealed directly to President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin to begin negotiating the extension of the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty START, the only remaining bilateral agreement between these two nuclear superpowers, and do it without delay. It would be a crippling blow to the world if the new START is not extended beyond 2021 when it is set to expire. This would not only eliminate remaining constraints on deployed nuclear arsenals, but also remove the monitoring and inspection capabilities which have provided both sides with increased transparency regarding nuclear capability. The climate change is the other existentialist threat facing humanity. While it has sparked encouraging activism and action from young people, universities, businesses, cities, and states, national governments continue to fall short. Of 60 or so countries that have committed to reducing their net carbon emissions to zero by 2050, they account for just 11% of global emissions. We are left to wonder what it will take to spur the needed action when nearly every person on the planet has experienced or knows someone who has experienced the ravages of extreme weather, flooding, drought, and wildfires. Making matters worse, cyber-enabled disinformation campaigns are sowing distrust in science, institutions, and nations. They fear into the feed that drives the threat of nuclear war and the denialism that impedes action on the climate crisis. A nuclear war that could end civilization, whether it is started intentionally or accidentally, is a real possibility. Meanwhile, climate change that could devastate the planet is undeniably underway, and for a variety of reasons, including cyber-enabled disinformation, democratic governments and other institutions that should be working to address these threats have failed to rise to the challenge. We are sometimes asked how the doomsday clock can be so close to midnight, so long after the Cold War. The answer is that we face a new kind of nuclear peril, a new existentialist threat in the climate crisis, and an information environment so corrupted that it is almost impossible for concerned governments and citizens to mobilize the consensus for necessary action. We now face a true emergency, an absolutely unacceptable state of world affairs that has eliminated any margin for error. We ask world leaders to join us in 2020 as we work to pull humanity back from the brink without any further delay. The doomsday clock now stands 100 seconds to midnight in what is arguably the most dangerous situation that humanity has ever faced. Now is a time to come together and unite and to act. Thank you for listening to these words from the distinguished leaders. Let us work to prevent nuclear winter from becoming our solution to global warming. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those words, Wayne. Up next, we have Eric Stamm with a bit of spoken word from Hope Out Loud. Eric, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to read two poems written by Hibakusha, literally person affected by a bomb, and generally the word for people who experienced the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These are two of the most famous of the atomic bomb poems and of the atomic bomb poets. Each captures the immediate aftermath of the bombing. Hiroshima in 4 poems, August 6, by Toji Sankichi. Can we forget that flash? Suddenly, 30,000 in the streets disappeared. In the crushed depths of darkness, the shrieks of 50,000 died out. When the swirling yellow smoke thinned, buildings split, bridges collapsed, packed trains rested singed and a shoreless accumulation of rubble and embers. Hiroshima. Before long, a line of naked bodies walking in groups, crying, with skin hanging down like rags, hands on chest, stamping on crumbled brain matter, burnt clothing covering hips. Corpses lie on the parade ground like stone images of Jesus dispersed in all directions. On the banks of the river, lying one on top of another, a group that had crawled to a tethered raft, also gradually transformed into corpses beneath the sun's scorching rays. And in the light of flames that pierced the evening sky, the place where mother and younger brother were pinned under alive also was engulfed in flames. And when the morning sun shone down on a group of high school girls who had fled and were lying on the floor of the armory in excrement, their bellies swollen, one eye crushed, half their bodies raw flesh with skin ripped off, hairless, impossible to tell who was who. All had stopped moving in a stagnant, offensive smell. The only sound, the wings of flies buzzing around metal basins. City of 300,000, can we forget that silence? In that stillness, the powerful appeal of the white eye socket to the wives and children who did not return home that tore apart our hearts? Can it be forgotten? The next poem is Bringing Forth New Life by Sadako Kurihara. Night in the basement of a concrete structure now in ruins. Victims of the atomic bomb jammed the room. It was dark, not even a single candle. The smell of fresh blood, the stench of death, the closeness of sweaty people, the moans. From out of all that, lo and behold, a voice, the baby's coming. In that hellish basement, at that very moment, a young woman had gone into labor, in the dark, without a single match. What to do? People forgot their own pains, worried about her. And then, I'm a midwife. I'll help with the birth. The speaker, seriously injured herself, had been moaning only moments before. And so a new life was born in the dark of that pit of hell. And so the midwife died before dawn, still bathed in blood. Let us be midwives. Let us be midwives, even if we lay down our own lives to do so. Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you, Eric. Up next, we're going to show two videos. One that is the moment and the sound of an atomic bomb explosion, and the next will be the history of atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Up next, we have Father David of Holy Family in Farmington to talk about why we need to fight for peace.
Thank you for having me tonight. I stand here as a representative of all Christian faiths and all those who seek peace. The words of Jesus ring forth, "Peace be with you," the words that he spoke so often to his followers and disciples. Today, Pope Francis expressed his closeness to the people of Japan and prayed that peace may come about in our world. He also recalled the destruction of human life and property and prayed that such horrors would never happen again. He said that we are, quote, "a people who thirst for peace and ought to make sacrifices for it," end quote. Today, as we come on this solemn memorial, when we remember that more than 225,000 innocent lives were taken, we recall that the efforts for peace have still a long way to go. That as we end one conflict, we encounter another conflict. And in our own time, we are seeing peaceful protests turned into violence, and not by those who are protesting, but by others who would seek to destroy peace. And so tonight, I pray that we as a people, humanity, those who call themselves religious in any way, would work in their lives for peace among their community, their family, their religious organizations. And I will end with a quote from Psalm 122. "To them and to all who work for peace, for the love of my brothers and sisters and my friends, I say to you, peace be upon you. Amen."
Thank you, Father David. Next, we have a pre-recorded video from Joe Wasserman introducing a Send a Letter campaign.
Hello, my name is Joe Wasserman. I've been a peace activist in the Hartford area for many years. I'm concerned about nuclear weapons, and I'm concerned about the dangerous nuclear arms race going on now between the United States, Russia, and China, between India and Pakistan, and in the Middle East, and what this means for humanity and what this means for our planet. It's disturbing that the Trump administration is moving towards renewing nuclear weapon testing. This is on top of the U.S. withdrawal from critical arms controls treaties, such as the INF and Open Skies Treaty, which have worked to stabilize the nuclear arms race. Nuclear testing, whether in the atmosphere, on the ground, or underwater, will pour gasoline on an already dangerous nuclear arms race, threaten public health, and destroy fragile ecological systems. This must be stopped. The Planet Act, S3886 in the Senate, and HR 7140 in the House, seeks to cut funding for nuclear weapon testing. Tonight, we are asking you to send a message to your House representative and to Senator Blumenthal, asking them to co-sponsor the Planet Act. Senator Murphy has already co-sponsored, and a thank you note could be sent to Senator Murphy for his co-sponsorship of the Planet Act. We will now go through a step-by-step process whereby you could send a message tonight to our senators and congresspeople. So, first of all, go to the No Nukes, No War website. That's www.nonukes-nowar.org. Once you get there, scroll down.
Scroll down all the way, and you will see the little girl in the mushroom cloud in the peace sign, and right under it is an orange link. Click that link. Once you get to the Hope, then you're at the Hope Out Loud webpage. You can start off, if you wish, with Senator Blumenthal. Click the link to Senator Blumenthal. That will get you to the webpage of Senator Richard Blumenthal. Once you're on the webpage, there is a message in blue. Select the message, select all, and copy. And then click the link underneath it for Blumenthal's webpage. You will, in terms of a subject area, I suggest foreign affairs, because nuclear testing has nothing to do with defense and everything to do with our relations with other nations. So click foreign affairs for subject matter. Then there's a number of questions. Fill in your name, address, etc. And when you get to the message box on the bottom, you could paste the message in the message box. You could revise and add to it if you wish, or keep it as it is. Either way is okay. Under subject, you select Planet Act and copy and paste it onto the subject. And then you send it. Next, go back to the Hope Out Loud webpage and click on your House representative. In the immediate Hartford area, it's likely to be John Larson, so we'll click on John Larson as an example. Again, there's a message in blue, very similar. It has the HR number. Select all of the message in blue. Copy. And then underneath that is the link to Representative Larson's webpage. Go to the webpage. You need to fill in your zip code in the case of Representative Larson's webpage, and fill in all the. That gets you to the main part of the webpage, and then fill in all the questions and paste the message onto the message, the text of the message. In John Larson's case, it's simply comment on policy. Every website is different. You want to request a message. You want to request a response, and then send it. You do some questions about under I am not a robot, and then after you answer the questions, I am not a robot. Send it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, who sent a message tonight. I think it's important. You could follow up tomorrow with a phone call reinforcing the need to co-sponsor the Planet Act. You could find the phone numbers in the webpage, on the web pages for the Congresspeople and senators. In the case of Senator Murphy, you could thank him for co-sponsoring the Planet Act and taking leadership. Good night. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for those words, Joe. Up next, we have Sena. Sena is one of the co-chairs of Sunrise, Connecticut, and she's going to be speaking on the link between the environment and nuclear weapons. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you so much, Mitch. My name is Sena Wazer. I am a 16-year-old climate activist and the co-director of Sunrise, Connecticut. I'm honored to be speaking here tonight about the effects of nuclear weapons on the environment. And I want to start by explaining the perspective through which I look at these intersecting issues. As a young environmental activist, I spend a lot of time fighting for a safe planet. A planet that will be habitable when I'm an adult, a planet that will be habitable for my children and for future generations. I look at environmental issues through a lens of justice and who it is going to impact first and the most heavily. And when I think about the environment and our planet and really the world at large, one of the issues that intersects very much and cannot be ignored is that of nuclear weapons. Our environment is already fragile from the many harms that we have inflicted upon it, whether that be through climate change, overfishing, excessive spraying of pesticides, or any other issue. And the last thing that we need is another stressor. When nuclear weapons are deployed, whether during testing or during war, the radioactive material in that bomb disperses into the environment and contaminates the air, the water, and the soil. It weakens the surrounding environment, killing plant and animal species and doing long-term damage. But the thing is, these weapons don't just affect the area immediately around where the bombs are deployed. Some of the fallout from those bombs goes high up into the atmosphere, falling all around the world for months or even years after deployment, permanently contaminating our world as a whole. We have already seen the devastating effect that these bombs have on people. We have used them and the effects are catastrophic. And should we use them again, should we engage in even a limited use of nuclear weapons, the costs would be enormous. Not only in human life, but also in terms of sustainability and damage that could last for decades, impacting many generations to come. Atomic bombs have the capability to plunge us into what's called the nuclear autumn, changing precipitation patterns, killing animals, threatening biodiversity, and destroying farmers' ability to produce food, possibly driving us into a global famine. Even listing these effects, I get nervous, afraid of the horrendous capabilities of these weapons. So what I want to do right now is paint a picture of a different world. A world that is possible, but that we will have to work hard to achieve. A world without the threat of constant nuclear warfare. A world where we strive for peace and equality instead of constant strife and danger. A world where we prioritize sustainability and preserving this beautiful planet for future generations. A world that is safe for all, no matter what country you live in, the color of your skin, your gender, or any other part of your identity. That is the world that I dream of every single day. Sometimes I don't know if we will ever get there. I'm disheartened by the acts of hate that we see daily. I'm scared by the threats of nuclear weapons and climate change. But I also believe in the inherent goodness of every person. I have confidence that through gatherings like these, where we acknowledge difficult histories and come together to make change for the better, we will succeed. When organizations with different missions and focuses come together to fight for a common cause, all of our goals become more attainable. I believe that we will build this world that so many of us dream of. And so I encourage all of you to keep working. I know it's hard and depressing at times, but these fights are critical. And although some might call my optimism youthful naivete, I believe that together we will overcome these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sena. Next on the agenda, we have Senator Anwar to speak on money for people's needs. Senator, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And I wanted to just mention I had an opportunity to visit Hiroshima. And if anybody ever has that opportunity, do spend some time there and learn about the stories about the individuals in their lives and how that had impacted this disaster, man-made human disaster with an intention, resulted in situations where people saw their bodies melt in front of them while they were alive. Let that sink in for a second. This resulted in people saw their bodies melt in front of their eyes while they were alive. And if you look at some of the pictures of that time, they're shadows of people that are left behind. Those shadows are the last remnant because their bodies were never found. Within them is a shadow of an elderly woman who is walking. And then the shadow that actually has remained imprinted in my mind is that of a child who's skipping a rope. And the child is, of course, in the air at the moment. And that very moment where the child was in the air, the child was murdered. And there are thousands of children and women and men who were murdered during that time. If you look at the situation of what had happened for the people over there and then where we are right now, the situation in the world is in a very, very complex situation where nationalism is on the rise. People are othering others at this time. Literally, the opportunity for taking away the narrative and building a new narrative around humans and then separating them into a dehumanized form is rampant across the planet. Right here in our communities, in our neighborhoods, you see messaging that you get which want to make you think that the other is not worthy of being human or equal to a or loving individual like you are. And I think that's there. And then the other part that is actually dangerous is that the leadership around the world is becoming very controlling and focused on being more superior than the other, and with an ultra nationalistic perspective, which creates the or less educated individuals and even educated individuals to hate people around who are different in their views. This chemistry with the information and the poor information or the wrong information that is being set up is creating a disaster, which is very, very becoming more likely at this time. And that's why there needs to be a thought and expansion of a viral spread of what we are talking about. Look, every time we are investing into war machines, we are taking the investment away from people. I've served as a mayor of a town, and I've also I'm serving as a state senator. Mayors across the entire United States had actually written to the presidents at times, have said, look, we can't even fix roads in our communities. We can't fix the bridges in our communities. We are fighting in each town between the two parties for $20,000, $5,000 and making the look evil and so on. Whereas if you see in the recent past, the federal government, when they had no choice but to invest back in the people, they were able to. What's going on right now is that we as a country have stopped investing in the people and have started to invest in war machinery. And one of those war machinery are the nuclear weapons, and then the whole world of working around the security of those nuclear weapons. That industry, that entire effort is weakening us from inside, because our ability to take care of the education of our children, we are actually putting the next generation in a debt that they are not able to sustain. The number of children going higher education is decreasing. The universities' budgets are decreasing. Our ability to do scientific research is decreasing because we have made a choice to try and not invest in them and let the people decide if they are able to pay for it. And I am seeing children who have adults as well who have been able to get admissions to best, most prestigious universities, but they're choosing not to get education because they cannot afford to do it. Our lack of investment in our future is a threat which is right in front of us, and we have a responsibility to reallocate our resources into other areas, like taking care of our future, rather than creating a bleak future of insecurity with a group of crazy individuals. In most cases, they are actually all cases, they are men who would like to be trigger happy to try and prove that they are bigger than the other. And this is something that is not a sustainable model for the world. And therefore, we have to have an awakening. The important thing is that child who's still up in the air, the child should be imprinted in everyone's mind, because the child is basically saying that I will not come down unless we start to invest in the future of our children. And if you look at it from faith perspective or lack of faith perspective, or people who do not have any specific belief, everyone believes in one thing, every single person, that don't do unto others what you don't want to be done unto you. And we are missing the most basic thing that has been a part of each and every faith, each and every community in the history of mankind. And that basic ingredient, we have lost it because we are doing and willing to do unto others that we would never want to be done to anybody. And then again, please continue these conversations. We have a lot of work ahead of us, because right now we should have thousands of people listening to this conversation rather than conversations. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Up next, we have a memorial minute pre-recorded by Wayne. Play that now.
Every year at the annual Hiroshima Nagasaki Remembrance in Hartford, we take a moment to remember those that have departed. There are many activists around the world and in more distant communities that need to be remembered and their legacy of action continued. This year, the Hartford area has lost two of its members, Joanne Bauer and Walt Dunnels. We would like to remember these individuals and others whose legacy needs to be remembered and honor their commitments to making the world a better place. Please join me for a moment of silence honoring them. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Up next, we have Eric Stamm directing people to another event in New Mexico. Eric.
Yeah, this is the 75th anniversary of the Hiroshima bombing, and for the last 3.5 years, the New Mexico 75th Anniversary Committee, and some national abolitionists, New Mexico abolitionists, together with Pace e Bene, an international abolitionist group, have been planning a major event at Los Alamos, New Mexico. Due to the COVID-19 crisis, these had to be consolidated and moved to an online event, which will begin tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's an impressive list of speakers from the keynote, who's Ira Helfand, one of the leaders of the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, which recently won a Nobel Peace Prize, as well as speakers including Native peoples, spiritual leaders, and other nuclear weapon abolitionists. The Reverend John Deere will be the host. We provided a link, or you can search for Hiroshima Commemoration New Mexico to register and join this national shared call. Our local organizing group of this event is a sponsor, and we strongly recommend that people attend the National New Mexico event.
Thank you, Eric. I will post that link in the chat shortly. Up next, we have Mary Sanders with a bit of spoken word. Mary, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I can't join you by video, but connection problems since the storm. I appreciate this little booklet of poems that was sent to me, and I chose 2 readings that I want to share with you tonight. The first one is titled Einstein's Regret. Einstein's regret ran deep, like the pools of sorrow that were his eyes. His mind could see things that others could not. The bending of light, the slowing of time, relationships of trains passing in the night, and power dormant and asleep that could be awakened. But who would dare? He saw patterns in snowflakes and stars, unimaginable simplicity. When the shadow of Hitler spread across Europe, what was Einstein to do? His regret ran deep, deeper than the pools of sorrow that were his eyes. The next one is titled An Improbable Garden. Where I go, sad city, you go with me. You are not worldly like Paris or Rome, but neither am I. You are not a city of snow-capped peaks, nor one with the calm sea wrapped around you. These wonders do not change the soul. You are not New York, nor Delhi, nor Rio, with their milling throngs and excitement. Such noise and light and busyness are too ephemeral for you. Your heritage is honorable. That counts for something. After your tragedy, you clawed your own earth until the plants slowly came back. You are the city with the courage to return from the dead. Your people bow deeply and smile their sorrowful smiles. Hiroshima, sad city, I give you the intensity of my solitude. I give you the drumbeat of my heart. I carry you with me in the hope that from your spirit, a better world may one day blossom. I give you the salt of my tears to mix with your grief and promise. Hiroshima, You are an improbable garden, and I, an even more improbable gardener. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And I'm going to kick it back to Eric.
Okay, yeah, I want to let people who are new, one of the biggest challenges of planning a Zoom event is we actually had to run on time. And this is an event that, for people who have come over the years, it is known for running over schedule. So I want to congratulate us all and try to keep us on schedule. In closing, I want to thank all of the presenters and planners who worked to make tonight possible and to encourage all of us present to wage peace fiercely. Educate, agitate, organize. On August 6, 75 years ago at 8:15 a.m. in Hiroshima, Japan, the atomic age began. Tonight, we've seen and heard what that means to all of us. The death, the absolute destruction, the loss of potentially equitable and sustainable futures. The world is truly in crisis, and we all need to take action to fight complacency and resignation to make a truly peaceful world. Possibly the most important election in our history is about ready to take place, and we all need to campaign and vote and help turn the world away from war and hopefully towards peace. To quote Larry Kramer, we have everything we need to make a better world. We just lack the will to do it. Let's all go out and work to make this a better world. In order to inspire you, we're going to end with a video of past Hartford Remembrance events with a soundtrack by David Brown, accompanied by Kevin Lampkin, singing our theme song, Hope Out Loud. Thank you all for coming. Look forward to someday living in a nuclear-free world.
When they wave the flag and bang the drum, you better hope out loud that peace will come. If you just sit silently and wait, then before you know it's gonna be too late. You gotta hope out loud. You gotta raise your voice. Let people know they have a choice. You gotta hope out loud. You gotta let them know, hey, that's not the way you're gonna go. Now the old men send the young to war. You know we've seen it all before. Well, it won't work now, didn't work back then. But the deadly cycle begins again. You gotta hope out loud. You gotta make it plain. There'll be no more killing in your name. You gotta hope out loud, so loud they hear. Gonna bring down apathy and fear. Good to pray, you know it soothes the soul. It'll ease your mind, it'll make you whole. But a silent prayer will only do. when there's no one else involved but you. You gotta hope out loud, you gotta pray for peace, so loud the echoes never cease. You gotta hope out loud, for all you're worth. If we save ourselves, we can save the earth. If we save ourselves,